All right, I think this is working. Okay, this is much better. The lighting here. Um, Welcome everyone. I see people are joining. 11, 12. The count is going up and I'm getting more and more nervous. I'm Luis Villa with Latino Outdoors and I'm coming to you live today from the ancestral lands of the Yokuts people, otherwise known as Fresno, California. And in a minute or so, I will be joined by Ruben Andrade, who's the superintendent of the César E. Chavez National Monument. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Ruben to join me. So give me 1 second while I do that. I think Ruben's handle on Instagram is Ranger Vato. So let's see if we can find Ranger Vato. Ah, yes. Here we go. Ruben, I hope you received that invitation. Ah, Ranger Vato, how are you?
Buenas tardes, Luis. I'm doing well.
It's good to meet you face to face. We spoke yesterday, but it's nice to see you.
It is. It is nice to
Yeah.
see you as well. I actually was able to make it to the park. Power came back on, and so we're here.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear it. So I'm just going to give a little context real quick to the audience. We've got about 21 people now joining us. So we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, or Latinx, or Latino Heritage Month, which celebrates, it's a month-long celebration that begins the middle of September and goes through the middle of October. And celebrates and recognizes Latinx heritage, culture, and contributions, particularly here in the U.S. So as part of that, Latino Outdoors is bringing you this Conversando Outdoors Monumentos conversation today between Ruben and myself. And we're going to be talking about national monuments, in particular the César E. Chavez National Monument. But also, by monumentos, we mean the people behind the monuments, both the ones that are honored by the monuments and the people like Ruben who shepherd them and amplify them and steward them. So welcome everyone to Conversando Outdoors Monumentos. And by the way, this is in collaboration with the Latino Heritage Fund, an initiative of the National Park Foundation. The mission of the Latino Heritage Fund is to preserve Latino history and elevate Latinx stories and contributions to the U.S. through national parks. There are about I think 24 Latino heritage sites listed on the Latino Heritage Fund section of the National Park Foundation's website. So for more information about those 24 sites, please check that website out and you'll see what I'm talking about. Ruben, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day here at Cesar Chavez National Monument in Keene, California. Just Can get much better than this. The smoke is finally clearing out, I think, from all the fires just up north of us. So beautiful.
You actually just got into one of my questions, which was, tell us about the where and the how of the National Monument. Where is it located? You just mentioned where it's located, but if you can say that again, when was it established and how did that all happen?
Great. So yes, so we are located 25 miles, más o menos, half an hour from Bakersfield, going east on Highway 58, and 10 miles west of Tehachapi, California, in Keene, California, right off Highway 58. It was established in 2012, October of 2012.
Ruben, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Okay.
And, so yes, so he came here, and we had over 7,000 people here at the monument to listen to the president proclaim this site. The monument itself is 105 acres total. 2 acres of that is managed by the National Park Service, and I have the honors of doing that. The other 103 acres are managed by the National Chavez Center, which is a branch of the Cesar Chavez Foundation. They are the ones that donated these 2 acres to America through the National Park Service.
Got it. Thank you. I don't know if it was my end or yours, but I couldn't hear you for a few seconds there, but I think that's when you were talking about when it was established. And that was in October of 2012, if I remember correctly.
Correct. October 8th of 2012.
Great. Thank you. Ruben, so you're the first and current superintendent of the National Monument, correct?
That is correct. Yes. When they were getting ready to establish this site, I was a superintendent at Minuteman Missile National Historic Site in South Dakota. We came here on a temporary assignment, and we wound up staying. It's been 9 years. It'll be 9 years on Friday, the 8th.
9 years on Friday. That's wonderful. By the way, if at some point you have any questions for me about me or Latino Outdoors, feel free to ask. I just want to put that out there. Con gusto. So you've been at the National Monument on Friday. It'll be 9 years, you mentioned, and you've been with National Park Service for, if I am not mistaken, about 23 years.
Yeah. It's
23 years.
A total of 28 years in the government.
In the government. So how did your National Park Service career begin, or just your career in government with the federal agencies, the federal government begin, and where has it taken you over the years?
So that's a little bit of a story, but yeah, when I was in middle school, my brother Sarapio, after he'd come back from Vietnam, got a job in Sequoia. Worked in Sequoia National Park. He was a maintenance heavy equipment operator. And even though my dad had been a World War II veteran and grew up in Texas and been out here in California forever, national parks, I think, is something that kind of didn't touch him very much. But once Serapio started working in Sequoia, we went up all the time, and it just became that I thought I would like to do in my future. It became kind of a dream. And when I had the opportunity to go to college, I studied resource and visitor management. Both of my degrees, my bachelor's and my master's, are in that. And took a while to get into the Park Service. Started out with the Bureau of Reclamations, then went to the Army Corps of Engineers, and finally came on to the Park Service. My first park was in Texas at the LBJ National Historic Park. I've been to a few other places, Capulin Volcano, Fort Union National Monument, Carlsbad Caverns in South Dakota at Minuteman Missile, which was my first superintendency, and then came here on assignment and didn't go away. I'm living a dream. Back in around 2001 or so, I was asked what my dream in the Park Service might be, and told a now mentor of mine that I wanted to be the first superintendent of Cesar Chavez National Park Site. And his jaw just dropped, and he says, Ruben, that's not even on the NPS radar. I says, well, I know, but you asked for a dream. And he said, we might not even start talking about that for 20 years. I mentioned to him that I hoped I'd still be here in 20 years. And so in 2012, when they were talking about doing this, they asked if I'd still like to be the first superintendent, even if it was temporary. And I said it'd still be the first. And of course I would. So living the dream.
You spoke it into existence, Ruben. You spoke it into existence. So speaking of that dream, is there I guess, a personal connection that you can talk about with
Sure,
the national monument?
sure. When Bill asked me that question about if I had a dream, I actually had thought about this on my return to my higher education. Went back to school to finish off my bachelor's degree in '93 after life had gotten in the way of finishing, and it's when Cesar had passed away. And I am the child of a farm labor family. Uh, my parents worked in the fields. I worked in the fields as probably even in middle school a little bit, especially through high school. Um, Met my wife working in the fields. So we lived this story. And we, even though the area we were in was not connected to the union itself, uh, you know, I'm sure we benefited from the work that he had done. So, you know, back in the '70s, if you were involved in anything in the community, you knew what was going on. And Caesar and the union and the movement were making changes for folks that were working in the field. So I could truly relate to um, what folks were going through to make a change in their life. You know, it was probably too late for my parents to get a lot more better um, quality of life working in the fields at the point. But the whole thing was about the dream for the children, the dream that their kids could go to school and have an opportunity to have a better life. And I am a product of that. So yeah, that's
That's
definitely a connection
wonderful.
for me.
That is a wonderful personal and familial connection to your dream, right? Your dream superintendency there at the Cesar E. Chavez National Monument. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, and I should have, but I don't want to assume that the audience necessarily knows who Cesar E. Chavez was. But he, along with Larry Itliong, a Filipino immigrant, um, and Chicana Dolores Huerta and many others were the early leaders of the worker movement in the Western U.S. and particularly the farm worker movement. So I just want to mention that. Um, Ruben, you mentioned your first superintendency and remind me again, it was.
In South Dakota, Minuteman Missile National Historic Site, which
Mhm.
told the story of you know the possibility of the world ending in nuclear war.
Oh, wow.
These were um, missile silos. So during the SALT treaty, the treaty between Russia and the United States to lower the inventory of nuclear weapons, um, the United States was able to keep two sites to commemorate history, and Minuteman Missile National Historic Site was part of the what the United States Federal Parks kept, the National Park Service. And then there was another one in North Dakota that was it's operated by the state. So we got a missile silo with a test missile in it and a command center where we hear about people having the key to launch missiles. Well, two Air Force officers sat in there and just waiting on word in case they needed to do what they needed to do. So a place that could have ended the world to a place where a man changed the world through pacifism, through nonviolence, is quite a difference, I think.
Quite a difference, quite a jump. I grew up in the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s, and I do remember the just the apprehension, that my fellow schoolmates and kids, felt just being in the midst of the Cold War until it ended in the late 80s, early 90s. At that National Park Service site, I read that part of your experience included overseeing visitor center management and planning.
Yes.
So you had some experience in that, and I was just curious, from that experience, what can you share about, just creating a thoughtful or culturally relevant visitor centers or National Park Service sites in general, considering, the importance of reaching diverse audiences and a public that's diverse these days.
Yeah, so that was actually the second task at establishing a new visitor center. But the first one was actually at Carlsbad Caverns. When I was there, the visitor center, this place that took all the visitors and got them ready to go down into the caverns, was well aged, and it needed to be redone. So we actually tore it down and had that rebuilt, and had to put exhibits in there to allow the visitor to make connections, to learn about the place. Had some experience of the role that it takes to supervise such a mission, but this time at a higher level of responsibility. So when I got there, I jokingly called myself a trailer park superintendent, because the exhibits were in one mobile home, and the administrative offices were in another. So we didn't have a place to really showcase the story, tell the untold stories, tell the important history of the site. So we were able to get that going, and it finally accepted visitors when I was actually here. So part of the task is, when you have visitors come to a park, how do you allow them and provide an avenue for them to learn the history, and to then put their life experiences to make connections to those histories? How do we know the things that we've lived, and can kind of connect them to the story of the site? And that was probably the most important. Not to just put up pictures and some great exhibitry, but to allow for people to build their own connections, whatever that might be, to set their own values, and connect them to the story and the people and the work, the experiences that those that lived it had to go through. So yeah, so that's pretty huge. We're fortunate here. Just recently, we've started working on what will now be the exhibits in the visitor center. So that's it's about a 5-year process, but we're getting started on that. So I'm looking forward to see what happens there.
That's fantastic. A 5-year process means it's a thoughtful one. So Ruben, you mentioned that everyone really can find their own connection to a particular site. In our case at Latino Outdoors, we're very emphatic about encouraging everyone to find their own connection to the outdoors. We know that being an outdoor enthusiast or outdoorsy is something that is defined differently by different people. So I'm curious to know, what about your personal connection to the outdoors? Do you have a particular early childhood memory when you realize, oh, I love the outdoors, or I'm connected to the outdoors, or something later in life?
Yeah, I shared the story of my brother Sarapio working at Sequoia when when I was in middle school, I believe, late middle school, and just going up there, seeing my first deer, seeing a first campground, seeing these beautiful trees, and just the outdoor and the natural setting. I fell in love with that. But something that always sits in the back of my mind too is later in life. The first time I was going to college, and we were community activists trying to help youth. We started a Centro Taquitle, it was called. It was so that we could tutor students so that they could have a better edge. Most of us were university students or had already graduated. So we started a little nonprofit, and a few of us have love for the outdoors. So we started taking them out, and we were getting ready to get a group of kids to go camping, and everything was all ready to go. And one of the youth, a young man, got in trouble. His father said he'd been lying to us to try to go camping. His father said he had lied, that he'd not ever been camping. And I told him, pues dígame, platíqueme qué pasó. And he told me they were migrant workers. And every time they went from one community doing labor work to another community, they parked on the side of the road and, they slept there en route to another place. He called that camping, and I explained to him that that's kind of not what we were trying to do. And so we realized that we needed to do a little more of that and just, share the skills needed to go camping and spend time in the woods and do that. So yeah, that's a little experience that I had.
That's wonderful. So I'm going to share a little bit about my own connections and love of the outdoors really quickly. And this is going to sound blasphemous, I think, to our Latino Outdoors audience, but I'm not a big camper. I'm not a huge fan of camping, but I'll tell you something. I can hike and walk for miles. I just love, just a leisurely hike anywhere, whether it's on the coast, in the forest. I spent several years living in Costa Rica, so I hiked a bunch of rainforests and just around the neighborhood, in an urban setting as well. There's so much nature to be found close to home as well. Thinking about day one, with the National Park Service and looking ahead to retirement, is it okay to mention that, Ruben?
Sure.
I know that something's coming up soon, right, for you?
Yeah, just a couple of weeks, I think.
What changed, in the agency? Can you talk about that you're proud of, that you've seen in your years there, and maybe one that, still needs to see more progress?
Well, when I came into the service, there was very few people of color. The Park Service knew that they were trying to make a change for a long time. I mentioned my meeting with the person that asked me what my dream in the Park Service. I'd already been in the Park Service for approximately three and a half years, and I had worked in the Corps of Engineers as a permanent park ranger, and there were very few people that looked like me. Matter of fact, my mentor, Bill Gwaltney, was an African-American man, and he didn't see that much color in that room full of chiefs, chiefs of interpretation at the time. And now, there's a lot more room for growth, so that the National Park Service and the rest of the land agencies can reflect what is in our society. There's still a lot more room, but you know what? As I walk through parks now, as I look at parks, Facebook, social media, I see that there's a lot more people that look like me and look like my children, and those that I grew up with, which were a very diverse in cultural aspects. So I think that is great. I mean, one time I was on a panel, and we were talking about diversity, and we were starting to make change. I remember saying something along the lines is, we're finally starting to, we've been doing the talk for a long time, and we're finally starting to do the walk. We're starting to get there. Long ways to go, but you know what? It's better than it was.
We're making progress, that's for sure. I think I read a stat somewhere that out of the tens of thousands, I don't remember how many NPS staff employees there are. I think there's about 6 or 7% that are that identify as Latino, Latina, Latinx, and of course the general population includes 18% of Latinos, Latinas, Hispanics. So there's some ground to be covered there still,
There is.
but progress has been made. So getting back to your personal life, if you don't mind, I know that you and your wife, Diane, are high school sweethearts. And so I'm wondering, we're talking about the outdoors and recreation in the outdoors. If there's a particular recreational activity that you and your wife have enjoyed over the years, whether it's from the very beginning of your relationship or more recently.
Yeah, it was young in our relationship, but only one of us liked to camp at one time. and it grew so that we raised our families camping in tents. Now we look for longer trips, and we're looking at longer times. So we are actually going to do that thing they call glamping.
Glamping. Glamorous camping.
Yeah, it just means we're going to have a nice bed, but we're still going to go where don't necessarily have all the hookups and amenities to hook the trailer up. I'm sure we'll do that on occasion, but I like being where I could listen to the water and not listen to somebody else's generator or something like that. So we will spend time, traveling to some of these places that that we raised our boys at, and we spend time making friendships and making relationships that are more like family. We've got people throughout the places that we work that we really care about. We talk to them when we can, but we'd like to stop and visit and hang out for a few days. And I think we'll be hooking the trailer up to the truck and taking some trips. We love the ocean. My first park ranger position was actually at Carpinteria State Beach back in 1984. That's last century. So I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time in these places. We already, take off every chance we can. We have a annual family camping trip where a lot of times we spend out there. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing, and just spending time with folks that we treasure.
That's wonderful. You're speaking to one of Latino Outdoors' organizational or community values. I like to say that we're more of a community than an organization, and that's familia. The others being comunidad, cultura, service, and access. But familia, there's a strong emphasis on family when it comes to Latinos getting into the outdoors and enjoying the outdoors. So we alluded to your upcoming retirement. I'm wondering, what are you thinking of doing with any newfound free time post-retirement?
Like I said, spending time traveling. I'm also trying to figure out how Latino Outdoors could use my experience in life. And, maybe if there's one group or somehow I can mentor some folks, I'd love to hang out with your organization, with the familia of Latino Outdoors.
I'm going to hold you to that, Ruben. I'm going to hold you to that. You said it here. It's recorded here for time immemorial. Muy bien, gracias. No, thank you for that. So I want to do a quick time check because I don't actually see the time on my phone right now. I don't know if you have a wristwatch or you can see your time, but if anybody in the audience can just in the chat box mention the time right now, because we want to be respectful of Ruben's time. And then also 12:40. So we're coming up on the half hour.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any questions for me. Since you're interested in Latino Outdoors, maybe you have a question for me, and we'll wrap up with that question.
Right.
And
I read your bio, and your actions speak for your corazón. Putting your time with this organization and trying to help our younger generations make that connection to these beautiful, great outdoors. And like you said, it's not just one way to do things. Some love camping, but you love hiking, and every time you take a venture out, there's a little more added to your soul by what you see around you, and you can notice. And you know, besides what we already like, it grows a sense of observation and you know, learning new things and observing things that maybe the first time you went out for a hike you wouldn't have noticed things of a certain nature. And then, you know, everything we do in life, every experience we have, we put it to our greater knowledge of life. So one of the things that I could, you know, say for sure, when you learn to go hike and you you put attention on what you're observing, when you're taking a stroll down the street or driving your car, or you are more apt to observe what's around you and the beauty of life that is growing around us everywhere.
That's beautiful, beautifully said, Ruben. And I can share an experience, personal experience that relates to that. So I lived in Costa Rica for 12 years, from 2006 to 2018. And I've got to say, in that country, there's probably the highest number per capita of naturalist guides, right? Well, they have all these beautiful national parks there. And so you learn from them. You learn to be a good observer. I remember at the beginning, you know, I'd go on a tour, a hike somewhere, and the guide would say, "Look at that, you know, in the trees there." And I'm thinking, "What are you looking at?" You know, I don't know what you're seeing, but you pick up the skill. And I believe that I brought it back with me to some degree to the U.S. The first few days after moving back to California, Southern California, Los Angeles, I remember walking over the pedestrian footbridge over the LA River, which is a concrete, you know, channel for flood control purposes. But off in the distance, I saw a lone seagull taking a little gulp of water from the center channel. And I think I was the only one that noticed it in the entire city. But to me, you know, that was nature in that moment, and I appreciated that. So I want to thank you, Ruben, for joining us today, for sharing your story with me and with our audience. I want to remind folks to learn more about not only the César Chavez National Monument, but the other Latino heritage sites on the www.nationalparks.org. That's the website for the National Park Foundation. And look for specifically the page that focuses on the Latino Heritage Fund. And that's where the 24 sites that I mentioned earlier are listed. I also want to invite our audience to visit LatinoOutdoors.org for stories of Latinx connections to the outdoors and info about our upcoming outings and events at our 26 locations around the country. And again, thank you, Ruben. I'm Luis Villa, soy Luis Villa, recordándoles que yo cuento outdoors, tú cuentas outdoors, todos contamos outdoors. Thank you all so much.
Gracias, Luis.
Gracias a ti. All right.
All right, man.
All right, I'm going to figure out how to end this now. Let's see here. I hope this works.